Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of All About FP&A. And today we have with us Christian Wattig. Christian has been in various leadership roles at organizations like Unilever, P&G, and Squarespace. Is the lead head of training at DataRails, which is a FP&A tools and software company. He's also the managing director at FP&A Prep, which is the live FP&A bootcamp for people who want to upskill their FP&A skills. Welcome to All About FP&A, Kristen.
Thank you, Asif. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Before we go ahead, and would you mind giving a brief background about yourself to our viewers?
Sure. So I've been in FP&A leadership roles for the last 12 years. Originally, I'm from Germany, as maybe you can tell from my accent, but I've been living in New York City for the last 10 years. My wife is American, that's how I ended up here. We also have a 1-year-old son. And I still remember it. 10 years ago we came to the States, and it was actually pretty intense for me because I decided to quit my job. I was working at Procter & Gamble at the time, and came here without having anything, without having a job lined up, because my wife was learning some English, but we knew here it just makes more sense because we both speak the language. And so I came here. We started by doing a drive through the southern states. We drove all the way from San Francisco to New York City, which was fantastic. Can highly recommend it if you ever get the chance. But then I was very fortunate that Unilever reached out, and I spent 7 years there in various roles. Then I did my MBA and moved into tech because I wanted to work at a company where you have faster decision making and you can see, the recommendation you're making as part of your FP&A role at a faster pace. And since then I've been working at tech companies. Now I'm at DataRails, which is an FP&A software company.
Wonderful. So what is it that you love about FP&A, and why did you decide to work in FP&A when you got started into finance?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I love about FP&A is that unique blend of two very different things. It's solving puzzles and psychology, right? So analysis, forecasting, planning, modeling, month-end close process optimization. It's all about solving puzzles. And then there is business partnering, budget management, advocating for sustainable growth and profitability. And that all comes down to knowing people and understanding psychology. And then you have telling the financial story of the business, which brings it all together. So I find that super fascinating. I'm curious, what do you like about FP&A, Asif?
So I like working with people a lot. So compared to other traditional roles, maybe you're not interacting with people as much as you would interact in FP&A. I think that is one area I like a lot, which was not, which actually took a little bit of backseat during COVID, where we are again back to virtual. But now things have gone back to hybrid. So I'm happy that we are again meeting people. So I think that is one area I like a lot. And also you get to take part in the strategy and help give direction to the company. So that is another area which I like. So those are the two areas. What about you mentioned about psychology? So what you seem to be a you seem to have studied it maybe in a lot of detail. So what do you feel about how is psychology connected to FP&A?
So psychology is about understanding how people think, right? And in FP&A, we do the analysis, we come up with a recommendation, with an insight. For example, we find out that certain investments have worked better than others. So maybe we should take money from one part of the company and invest it into a different project.
Mhm.
And we are not the ones who are making the decision. Usually it's the R&D department, engineering or marketing who are owning those budgets, who are spending the money. So we have to influence them. And influencing, in my opinion, really comes down to understanding what people's needs are. Like what are their goals, what are they trying to achieve, what are they struggling with, and then figuring out how this recommendation that we have helps them reach their goal, and because that's how you can come together. And that to me is at the heart of the psychology you need to succeed in FP&A.
Makes sense. So understanding human behavior along with providing support on the finance. So yeah, that's amazing combination in FP&A that at least we get to experience. You mentioned you moved from an FP&A role to a head of training role right now at Data Rails. So I wanted to know what has been your experience transitioning into training and development role, and what has been your biggest achievement in 2022. So we just completed 2022. We are in February, so it would be. I'm curious to know what was your biggest achievement in 2022.
Yeah. So to answer the first question, it was a few years ago that I discovered that I really enjoyed teaching, because when I was leading FP&A teams, what I liked most was those one-to-ones with people where they ask me questions and I can coach them and I can develop them. And then I also led the internal finance training team at Unilever, where I developed courses about Excel and productivity for my fellow, financial analysts at Unilever.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed doing that. And so when my current company offered me this opportunity to become the head of training, I jumped on it, because now I'm still dealing with FP&A every day, of course, but I'm thinking about how do I teach it? How do I teach it to other parts in the company who are working with finance teams, because they're the customers of my company, and how do I help them learn and figure out what FP&A really is about? I find that super interesting, especially also because it's a great synergy with my course, So I teach a course called FP&A Bootcamp, where finance professionals learn how to create analysis, forecasts, presentations, and how to drive the business forward. And I've been teaching that since the beginning of 2022. Actually, the first cohort was in October 2021. And so it's a great synergy with my job at Data Rails, because it helps me become a better teacher because I do it every day. And that also leads me to the second question you asked about my biggest achievement. When I had my very first cohort of FP&A Bootcamp in October in 2021, was only 4 students. But then the next time I taught it, it was over 20, and then it just kept growing. And so I was really blown away by that. And then at the end of last year, we also hit a milestone where we became one of the top bestsellers at Maven. So Maven is the platform where I host my course, maven.com. It's for courses that are taught live over Zoom, because my course has, it's all about role plays and breakout room discussions and case studies, because I think that's more effective and more engaging for people. And at the end of last year, I hit the bestseller list for the first time. And I'm really proud of that because, Maven has over 400 courses there. And yeah, so that was my big achievement for 2022.
Certainly, I think that is a big achievement. So among 400 courses, if you get into the top bestseller, and I know Maven because they have a lot of other more popular courses which are not very niche like FP&A. So getting into the top, you mentioned top three, or is it the
Top
bestseller
3.
like the top three?
It was
And
the
even
top 3, actually. Yeah.
yeah, so even getting into the top 10 or would have been a great achievement. The top three certainly, if you actually killed it. So what let me so let's move on. So let's move on to what we do to get. I mean, what we do. So let's move on to what we do in terms of content creation and also teaching. So let's take a few questions on content creation. So I have started following you, I think I think a year back roughly, and now you have about 28,000 people following you. So how did that get started? When did you start that, and how's that experience been?
Yeah, it's an interesting story because you must have then just started following me when I just got going with LinkedIn. So in mid 2021, I had 900 followers, right? So I had almost I started from almost nothing, and the reason that what really helped me get there was when I saw that Maven helps subject matter experts like me help them teach how to create curriculum and how to create, a cohort-based course, I jumped on it immediately. But they had a requirement. You were only able to join their training program if you have more than 100 people who say that they're interested in your course. And up to then, I haven't posted much on LinkedIn. I went there to read content, etc., but I wasn't very active. But that kind of gave me the a reason and the motivation to just give it a try, And so I started posting, and I got to 100 people fairly quickly, who said they're interested in the course. And that was really eye-opening to me because I started to realize how many people you can reach through LinkedIn. And I also learned that I actually enjoy the process of writing and creating content and sharing it with people there. So that's how I got started doing it.
Amazing. Yeah, I have seen you grow from, I think, when you got started, and now so it's been amazing growth on LinkedIn as well, along with your FP&A bootcamp. So what advice would you give to somebody who's starting out on LinkedIn to create content?
Yeah. So with a social media platform like LinkedIn, it's about consistency, right? And you're probably I mean, I'm sure you're very aware of that, Asif, because you're very successful on LinkedIn as well. But to the people who are watching this, you need consistency, and you need to find something that keeps you motivated. You need to figure out, okay, what is it that gets you to keep writing, keep posting several times a week for months at a time, right? And I realized that it's not just about growing your followers or even selling something like a course or telling people that your course exists. It's about, for me, what was super motivating over time is about that you can make great acquaintances and even friends that keep you motivated. I was really fortunate to find others who are also, trying to build their audience and share what they know in the space. And I think it's super motivating to see, to see them post and see them being successful. And then that encourages you that, okay, it does make sense to put time into this and to share more. And I found that really rewarding. And the other thing that people have to realize is when you start posting, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, Asif, is there are opportunities that come and find you. The way I see it is you increase your surface area for luck. So for example, I had someone reach out to me with a book offer. I was invited to join 4 podcasts, and I wouldn't have done that without LinkedIn. I got invited to your show, which I'm really grateful about. And I even got a speaking engagement where I was on the stage at the annual conference of the Association for Finance Professionals in front of 200 people of an in-person audience, which was very exciting. And I wouldn't have gotten any of these opportunities had I not been there and posted consistently on LinkedIn.
Got it. So if I can summarize, it could be finding something that you really like and you're motivated to share your expertise in that area, and then being consistent on it and doing it every week or every other day as consistently as you can. So brings me to that brings me back to the FP&A bootcamp, which you talked about briefly. So what is the target audience for the FP&A bootcamp? Which people or which who should be looking at the FP&A bootcamp? Who would be your ideal students?
Yeah. So the majority of my students have a background in accounting and they have several years of experience. They understand how financial statements work, but they haven't done much in terms of classic FP&A yet. So that's budgeting, forecasting, analysis, and financial modeling. And they're in a situation where they need to learn FP&A because either their boss told them to focus on it or they want to move into an FP&A role or in the process of moving an FP&A role. That's part of it. And then the other group of people who take FP&A bootcamp is also more experienced people who have done FP&A, maybe sometimes even for several years. And they join not because they don't know how to do a forecast or a budget, but they join because they don't know what they don't know, right? So they're looking to see how other companies are approaching things and learn best practices.
Makes sense. So it's two set of audiences. One is who are having some finance background but new to FP&A, and the other one is experienced people who are working in FP&A but they want to upskill or they want to learn the latest things that are going on in FP&A.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what would be, so even I've started recently my course, which is more towards beginners in finance and FP&A. So I wanted to know what is the hardest part about teaching a live virtual online class. So have you encountered any challenges?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for a year and taught eight live cohorts so far. And what was difficult at the beginning was getting students to come off mute and speak up, during workshops,
Mhm.
because that's really what makes the course engaging, fun, and effective. Bouncing ideas off of each other, sharing their thoughts, and learning from each other that way. And so I wanted more students to do that. And but over time, I learned more about that. And one thing that really made a difference for me is just give people space, right? Ask a question. If you don't get an answer right away, give people a moment longer to think and use silence as a motivator, essentially. And that made people more comfortable. They started speaking up, and seeing other students speak up and come off mute then encouraged others to do it as well. And from there on, I had students be much more engaged and more in there, which, resulted in it being more fun and more engaging for them and for me as a teacher as well.
Got it. Okay. So I want to share what's the hardest part for me being so very similar,
Yeah.
but when I do classes, most people actually come off mute, so that's not a big problem, but it's the camera that they try to avoid. So when I have 20
Mm.
people in the class, usually there will be one or two people on camera, and other 18 people would be switching off camera or maybe not actively participating. So to make sure that people come on camera, just because you want them to pay attention and be 100% involved, participate. I think that has been another challenge that I have faced. But luckily, it has gone bet. It has become better over the last one or two classes. So I think getting all people off mute and getting them on camera, I think, are two common challenges that we face.
Yeah, it's a great point, because when you turn your camera on, it's easier for the instructor to see, right, how are we going okay in terms of pacing? Are people understanding it? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? And also it's more engaging for the student. Yeah, that's a good point. I always tell people in the beginning to turn their camera on if they're in an environment where they can do so. And then if they have to multitask, because it also happens sometimes, right? People still have a life, then I tell them, turn your camera off, do what you have to do, and when you're ready to re-engage with the course, turn your camera back on. And that seems to be working.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing or best advice that we can give. Moving on, there's a new segment on this show, so where we have questions from FP&A community. So we have questions from few folks. So the first question we have is from Paul Barnhurst, which is the FP&A guy. So Paul is asking you, if FP&A was a car, what would it be like?
That's an interesting question. If FP&A was a car, what kind of car would it be? I think FP&A would be a pickup truck. It's not a race car, right? Speed isn't everything.
Mhm.
And we are generalists, right? We can do a lot of things that other cars can't, like moving more than just people, and carrying heavy loads. And translating that to FP&A, we can do more than just emailing out data. We can easily carry heavy loads, like taking that data, making sense of it, turning it into insights, and then using that to drive the company forward. So I think a pickup truck is a good analogy.
Nice. I can see a LinkedIn meme with FP&A coming up
Great
soon.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one is from Nicholas Butcher. So he's asking you, we talked about the hardest part. So he's now asking you, what is the part that your students like the most about the FP&A bootcamp? And I can share as well because I had participated in one of the cohorts as well. So I
Oh,
want you to
yeah.
go first. I want you to go first.
Sure. So what my students tell me again and again is that they love the fact that it's live, right? So you have the opportunity to ask me questions throughout the course, and they especially also enjoy that they can have these practice sessions like role plays and breakout room discussions. And on top of that, they can also learn from each other, right? Which is very difficult when you have a video-based course. And they meet each other in the breakout rooms in the community that we also have, the community forum, and they realize that a lot of the challenges that they're dealing with are shared by others. They're not alone, and so they can share what worked, what didn't work for them with their peers and with other finance professionals. And they tell me that that's very rewarding. But I'm curious to hear how your experience was.
Yeah, so I think you covered most of it. So I was going to mention about the activities and live interaction as well. Another thing I liked was the games that we did. I think we did, I don't know if we do it now as well, but when we did the cohort last year, we used to do few games as well. So I think Kahoot, we used to use few tools and we used to play games. So I think I should mention that as well.
Yeah, we still do that. We still have those. We have quizzes and we have role plays where you can step into the shoes of a finance manager or marketing manager and have a tough conversation where you can practice your business partnering skills.
Amazing. The last question we have is from Anders. So Anders is asking you, what is the one thing that FP&A professionals should focus on in terms of the skill? If they want to build a skill, what should be that one skill that they should focus on?
I think there isn't just one thing. I think there are three things at a high level that you need to succeed in FP&A. The first one is attention to detail. We need to be able to be comfortable with a large spreadsheet with a lot of data and figuring out, okay, where are the little parts of it that could really make a difference. And we need to, when we're building financial models, we need to have the attention to make sure, that all the formulas work and have the discipline for quality there. And the second thing is the ability to see the big picture. Because if we just focus on the details and the numbers, we're missing on how to, how to find those insights that we can turn into a recommendation that people can take action on. And to do that, you need a broader business understanding. You need to be able to take a step back, ask a lot of questions, and understand, what's the vision, what's the strategy that links to. And the third thing is communication skills, because none of what I mentioned so far really helps you much if you can't communicate it, if you can't turn it into a financial story in a presentation or in a communication. So attention to detail, ability to see the big picture, and communication skills that I think is what you need to succeed in FP&A.
Yeah, I think you covered the top three, which I usually share on LinkedIn out of the 5 or 7 skills. So amazing. Now, before we wrap up, I have last few questions, maybe a couple of them. What do you see as uh, emerging trend in 2023 and beyond for FP&A? Do you see anything that people should focus on in terms of new trends that are emerging in finance and FP&A?
Yeah. For me, biggest trend in 2023 is automation, and it's both in terms of reducing manual tasks that has been around before, right? There are great tools that you can use to have reports that update at a click of a button and so on. But now we're also seeing more and more AI-based inventions and companies and software. So, automation will reduce manual tasks, and I think it won't replace higher level tasks like forecasting, planning, etc., but it will make it easier and it will augment it. And so I think companies and FP&A teams that jump on that sooner rather than later are the ones who will succeed this year and beyond.
Automation and people need to continuously learn and be updated about the new technologies. So what are you focusing on these days in terms of learning? Do you read any books, podcasts, or do you do you do any other courses if you are doing these days, and if you would want to share?
Yeah, so continually learning is super, super important because we live in a day and age where there's a lot of information out there. People are willing to share what they want. And so it would be a big mistake if you're not trying to stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Which is essentially what you do when you keep learning from others who are a step further than you or who have, experiences that you don't have. And so specifically, I think today you can get that through podcasts and through social media. So podcasts, if people want to learn more about FP&A, especially I recommend FP&A Today, fantastic podcast. And then also CFO Weekly is another one that's great. And then in terms of social media, on LinkedIn, there are more and more people now that put a lot of time and effort into sharing what they learned about FP&A and about finance and accounting in general. So yeah, I learn a lot there as well. And I would encourage anyone to give LinkedIn a try and see, okay, who is sharing, what are people sharing? Are they sharing things that are useful for me that I can implement right away? And then, if you want to take it a step further, see if maybe they also offer paid courses where you can even learn even more from them, because that's really a powerful development. I think that more and more people are happy to share what they learned, and that's a way how you can get condensed experience that they collected over years and years, like me and like you yourself as well, Asif. And then you can learn all of that in a much shorter time frame. So I think that's very powerful.
It is definitely. So we'll put all those links that you mentioned, the FP&A Today podcast, the CFO Weekly as well, so that people can join or start following them. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to talk about? Maybe last remarks or closing remarks that you may want to make?
Um, Maybe some advice for those out there who are just now starting their career today in FP&A, because it can be a bit overwhelming because there's so much you have to learn. And my advice is, yes, build your technical skills first. That's the foundation for everything. You need that, but don't do it at the expense of developing your communication skills right away as well, and figure out how you can do more, presenting, partnering with other teams, etc. Because as I mentioned, automation will become bigger and bigger, but what will never go away is the need to influence people, to work with other teams. And so that's why focusing on your communication skills early in your career will set you up for success.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope we again meet sometime soon. Thank you,
Thank you,
Christian.
Asif. Thanks a lot
Thank
for
you.
having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.